right, today, back at it. New guest, Danny Brown. Back here, we're in the library. We got Lucas here as always, here for the Athlete Builder. A little bit about Danny. He and I go back a little ways. Legit dude. I thought it was just a master's degree from Purdue. No, it turns out it's PhD. USAW level 2 coach, which means he's taking people to international competitions. He's owned 6 gyms. He's taken people to the Arnold for years after years, dozens at a time, over 150 people to the Arnold, over 150 people to American Open. He's taken people to on the international team, the junior world team. Background in all things meathead, degrees in kinesiology, spent time doing Olympic lifting, athlete, does jiu-jitsu now. Owns or works in a couple other businesses. And how I got to know Dan right off the bat was it's 2012. I'm at CrossFit Naptown in downtown Indianapolis doing a little internship because I'm thinking about transitioning out of the financial world to strength and conditioning, CrossFit specifically. And with CrossFit, it's constantly varied. It's a lot of broad stuff, doing a little bit of everything. And a big component is Olympic lifting. And if I want to be good at it, I have to go somewhere where I actually have to spend time, not just doing varied training. I want to be very specific. So I went and found Dan. He was working at a gym on the north side, and I'm driving an hour one way for a 60, 90-minute session 2 times a week for a year. So when people come to me and say, hey, I want to be good at cleans or snatches, whatever, I said, well, 3 hours of one-on-one coaching for a year is what it took me to be okay. Much better at coaching it, but I'm still just okay. So doing it once a week or twice a week for 20 minutes, not really going to do it, but to be well-rounded, you'd be okay. But that's how I got to meet Dan. And that was back in 12 and 13. I opened the gym in March of 13. So I went through almost all of 13, starting the gym and traveling the north side to get, you have to go where the knowledge is. And there was not a lot in Indianapolis at all. And there still isn't. There's only a couple people that actually decent at it. So, and Dan is top of the food chain in that area. So got to meet with him, worked with him, helped me with my gym. Some of his coaches have been to my gym to coach. We've had competitions together. We've done breast cancer fundraiser together. So bit of a history. So I'm at my 10-year anniversary. So welcome to the show, Danny Brown.
Thank you. I have to say 2 things. 1, I'm a PhD ABD. And
Okay.
2, when we did the breast cancer fundraiser, I puked RDO paleo on the go chili everywhere.
Right.
If you do remember that. It was outside, it was October. I ate chili before doing a whole bunch of clean and jerks and just drank a Red Bull, puked it. Anyway.
So we're downtown outside the Murat Theater. Naptown is running barbells for boobs, and a lot of gyms are participating. And Dan comes down from his gym, and so they're doing in the CrossFit World Grace. It's 30 clean and presses at 60 kilos or 135 pounds roughly. And in the Olympic lifting world, anything over 3 reps, and it's cardio. And here comes Dan. He is out of the gate doing his 60 clean and presses, and he does the first 10 in under like 40 seconds. It's just boom, 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 boom. Just touch and go, touch and go, touch and go. He's on fire. Gets the next 5, 6. We're just past a minute, right? And then it's like another 30 seconds for 1 or 2. Then he's walking around, another 30 seconds, 1 or 2, another 30 seconds, 1, and his wheels fall off. So to finish the full 30 reps, it's
wow.
It's a while. Usually it's a 7-minute cap. He's capped out, and we're in the parking lot in October, and it's cold in Indianapolis. He goes over to his light pole and just sits there. And I'm like, hey, dude, you're right. He goes, man, I'm fucked up, man. This is bad. He goes, 30 reps, man. It's 30. He goes, yeah, I'm out. Just laying there, broken.
I contemplated doing it at 225 too. I do remember that. That was a bad decision.
Yeah. If 60 kilos is bad. Yeah. 100 kilos way worse. So you got some letters after your name. You're taking people places. You've had great results. You've run some businesses and you've run athletes and you got them all better. So we're lucky to have you on. So, first, really, thank you. Appreciate it. When I always send out this questionnaire survey, trying to get ideas going on what we're going to talk about, and you just simply write non-traditional route to Power 5, right? So the Power 5 schools in the world, Big Ten's one of those, and you were at Purdue. So what's the non-traditional route you took?
Okay, so 2008, I'm leaving the global gym world. Okay, and I decide, moved from Chicago back to Indy, broke up with the girl, kind of how that stuff goes. Um, decide one day as I'm working at Globo Gym that my life's about to take a significant turn. And I just decide at that moment, like I'm done doing personal training at this Globo Gym. I'm going to do one of two things. And in the same week, I went and did the AVSFAB and
Yeah.
applied to OCS. And I
Okay.
went and did the GMAT and applied to 3 schools. And I was like, I'm doing something different. And I had a connection at Purdue, and there was a door left open when I finished undergrad. They're like, anytime you want to come back, let us know. And I was not the best undergraduate student, and that is part of the story, but part of the story for another time. But I had done some good things there, building relationships where it helped me to get admitted. Now, the way that this was going to work was I was going to get admitted to the health and kinesiology department on an academic probation, and I was going to get funded through the health and kinesiology department, and I was going to teach some classes. But what I really want to do is I want to be a strength and conditioning coach. And my mentor on the academic side was like, that's fine. Like, send this guy, Jim Lathrop. He was my boss for Purdue. I love the guy. But I didn't know him at the time. Send Jim an email. Tell him this is what you want to do. And see if he'll let you like work in between both places. And so I apply like real late application to graduate school. I think I make application like right before the deadline, which might have been like May or June, something like that. School starts in September. So I get accepted, and I'm sending him emails. He's not responding. I'm calling the football office. He's not returning any of my calls. I finally get pissed and send him certified mail through FedEx that he has to sign for with a handwritten letter saying, I just want to work for you for free. Just let me. I'm going to be there. Just like, I just want to work. I had XYZ background and crickets. Okay. So I sell everything, move back to West Lafayette. When I say everything, including my car, I had a bike, my laptop, and that was about it. And I kind of check in day one with the kinesiology department. And after I kind of do like the meet and greets and whatnot, I head right over to the athletic department and just walk in the weight room. And I don't know Jim, I haven't met Jim, but it's real par for the course having known him now. But I walk in and he's sitting in his office inside Mollenkoff with his back to the door playing Sudoku. And so I knock on the window doors.
You have a stack of mail right next to you with all your letters.
That's it, pretty much. And that's this dude had a messy office. Anybody that knows him, he's a great guy, but like just that's just how he was. And so I introduced myself, and he's not even looking up from his Sudoku. Like he's just ingrained in this puzzle. And he's like, yeah, I know who you are. You're the one that sent me the certified letter. And I was like,
yep.
You couldn't respond. He goes, here's the deal. He's like, I don't want to hire anybody from a Globo Gym. He's like, you didn't play Division I football. He's like, that's typically who we have in here. And he's like, but I'll tell you what, because you're persistent, I will let you come work for a semester for free. And then if I don't hate you, you can come back the second semester. And if the second semester goes well, we'll talk about you getting paid the next year. Does that sound like a deal? And I was like, what time you want me here? He's like, 5 a.m. on Monday. Perfect.
Boom.
So, and at the time,
setting up cones, right?
Setting up cones. And I went to grad school after I had taken some years off. So I was like 25, 20, 26, 27. setting up cones. And
Yep.
fuck, I didn't even get to set up cones for a couple months, right? And I would go anytime I wasn't teaching class, I would go right back to the weight room. I gave him my schedule, so you'll know where I'm at. And when I'm not in class, I'm going to be here. If I'm not going to be here, I will let you know. And he doesn't give a shit, right? Like I'm not on his payroll. I'm just some
Right.
guy, but it was important to me for him to know that I was serious about the direction I wanted to take this. And then about 60 or 90 days in, there's like a big stack of plyo boxes in the weight room. We drag them out in the field house. And I would just, after we're done training, I just go sit on those boxes, wait for an hour, 2 hours, however much time until the next group came in, and pretty much, keep to myself. I didn't really have any friends at the time. I had a couple of GAs that I were becoming friendly with, but Jim wouldn't talk to me. He would just, I was observing at its core. And like probably 60 days in, he was like, hey, man, he's like, why don't you come in here and sit in my office? And like that,
You think
then he
getting
started talking. Then he
you
started
think you're
talking
getting
to me.
fired at that point? Or no? You're like,
Nah, no, I was pretty squared away. But then I just gradually started getting more and more responsibility, and I got to do all kinds of shit that a lot of people that he hired didn't get to do. And it's always been a good reminder because it was like a real circuitous route to that path. And when I first started, I looked at it as such a disadvantage because I thought, I was behind the eight ball. I didn't play Division I athletics. I had no connections in Power Five and beyond. And like, how am I going to make this happen? But as time wore on, I had more and more flexibility and more freedom to expand on what I was doing, right? Because I wasn't tied to being paid by the athletic department, because Jim viewed it as somebody who's just like a hardworking dude. He let me do things that he wouldn't let everybody do, and
mm,
so it ended up becoming a really good strength for me. And I was lucky enough to stay on after he even got fired, and you know left college coaching on my terms, which not everybody gets to do.
that's tough. And you're right. It's such a tremendous gift to have to learn to focus so deliberately on a task. It's such a tremendous gift to have to suffer like that, to develop that perseverance, because you don't get that without being in some kind of pain. And then to learn how to build that trust in which this other person can depend on you and then give you more responsibility, and then you keep growing, right? So without that challenge, you don't become who you are, right?
For sure. And some things like really worked in my favor. Number one, I was older, right? Not, I think I was 26 or 27 when I started, so I wasn't 22.
Right.
So I was a little bit older than the guys I was coaching. But I mean, shit, Keith Smith was a 6 year senior. I mean, he was basically my age, and there's a couple guys that were older too. But this was in 2010, okay, or 2009, 10. I can't remember now. But cell phones were not as prevalent as they are now. Social media was seen in a completely different light, and Jim had the rule that you could not have your cell phone it could be in your pocket on the floor while you were coaching. So it like was in an office all day. I was never on it. The only time after being there 3 years, my wife at the time was pregnant. I got to have it when she was approaching due date. I could keep it on me. But so for however many hours a day, I was just dialed into this thing. And this is like a real interesting point is leading up to going to Purdue when I was working in the Globo gym is when I actually got really into Olympic weightlifting, right? But I hadn't had a ton of experience. I didn't have anybody to coach with it. There's no coaches around me. I was kind of just trying to learn it on my own. And Jim saw that in me. And he was like, hey, I think you need to pursue this. He's like, you're all about it. He's like, you're always reading shit about it. You're always looking at these like Russian training manuals and buying this shit off these random ass websites. And he was like really encouraging me to go down that path. And then it got to a point where, by my third year there, I was doing the programming for the football team on the Olympic lifting side of it. Right. So just like that was a pretty quick transition. But I'd say that transition was quick. But if you think about the volume of athletes people see, this magnified everything. So let me kind of break that down for you. Football team at the time was roughly 120 kids. Okay. So I ultimately got assigned to football and wrestling. Okay, wrestling's 35 kids. And then just because I liked being there and I liked the sport, I would help out with track and field. Track and field's 500 kids, right? So if you just break it down by how many people are coming through the weight room in a day, and then let's just average it to 3 times a week, which most of them train more than 3 times a week, but you have off season and all that shit. You're having hours and hours and hours and hours of just looking at a problem and trying to solve it. And the majority of my time, there was no way. I didn't know enough to know how to solve the problem, but things started making sense as I read more and I integrated. I talked to other coaches, right? So that was a huge advantage for me, just seeing that volume of work. The second thing was I could now pick up the phone and call an expert in the field and just tell them, I'm Dan Brown, I work at Purdue, and I'm trying to learn more about Olympic lifting, to take my call, right? And I'll give you 2 examples. I called Mike Bergner,
Oh,
and
wow.
at the time was like, he wasn't really that well known outside of Olympic weightlifting. I just called him. He's like at his house, and he played at Notre Dame, which is a rival. So he's like talking shit, but
Yeah.
like great dude, was just like, hey, yeah, let me help you, okay?
Right.
And the other one was like Greg Everett, and then my second boss his son had actually trained with Greg. So when you like think about just
For those
having
that don't
access
know,
to,
Greg's with Catalyst out in Pacific Northwest.
yeah,
Legit coach, takes people
yeah,
everywhere.
and
High level coach.
I'm sure he doesn't even remember it, right? I think I sent him an email, say, hey, can we talk? He had been training. Like I said, my second boss at Purdue's son, and just got some good pointers and things to look at, and then got to continue to work and develop. And then I met a guy over in Ohio named Mark Canella. He's the guy that runs the Arnold, and at the time he had Nick Mangold's little sister was his
Okay.
athlete, and they had gone to the Olympics a couple times. And he was very open and generous with his time, and he really became my mentor in Olympic weightlifting. And to this day, he's one of the most unknown coaches of Olympic weightlifting in the U.S., but has one of the greatest technical, analytical minds for it.
Awesome. I've really found that some of the really legit coaches, or gyms, if I just give them a call, they usually take it. And they're like, yeah, they're willing to help. And those that are really insecure, not so much. But those are at the top, they're like usually shoving and funneling that information downhill so people can get better. And it's really been, a great gift. Who was the head coach at Purdue when you were there for football? Was that Danny Hope?
Danny, yeah.
Danny. Mr. Kettlebells? Is that right? Who's the quarterback?
We had like 5.
Right.
So we brought the big one was Robert Marv, came from Miami. He had started there as a freshman.
Marv. So this is
Basically,
all after Orton is done, right?
yeah, this was right after Painter. So
Okay.
Painter kind of ended that steady streak of quarterback play, and
Getting
then
drafted and stuff.
my first year there was Joey Elliott, and then
Yep.
we went into kind of just brought in Robert Marv, who had a great kid out of Florida, Rob Henry. Justin Siller had been removed from the team previously. He came back, played a little bit of receiver, a little bit of quarterback. We had a kid, a big pocket passer named Caleb Turbush, and all 3 of those guys kind of rotated around on the plane. They were all plagued with injuries, so it's kind of just secure yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
How many people from those teams got shot?
Well, it's not. Well, sadly enough, one of them. This is after after he left the school. One of them went back home and died of gang violence. But there was, was an eye opener for me. Okay,
Right.
because I went there, and at the time we were recruiting a lot of Florida, right? A lot of Dade County, a lot of South Miami type area kids. We also had some kids coming out of New Jersey, Philly area, things like that. But we did recruit a couple kids that
Plainfield.
were, I mean, we did, but They weren't shooting each other, but we did have two kids. It was an eye opener for me. We had two kids on our team, um, and they had in high school. They went to rival high schools, had been involved in shooting after the game, shooting at each other, and
Mm,
they both knew it. And they were one of the kid was out of JUCO, the other one we had recruited. Nobody knew this at the time, by the way. It wasn't like we knew this and recruited them. It was just happenstance, kind of found out after the fact. But these two had been after a rival game, got into it. They were standing across the parking lot shooting at each other. And one of them
jeez.
had already been there. He was really he was a really good player for us. And the other one we recruited from a JUCO. And so we had a mezzanine that walked around the weight room in that center there. And one of them walks by one of the meeting rooms up there. And the one kid down at the bottom says, "Hey, is that so and so?" I said, "Yeah, it's him." And he was like, just starts shaking his head. And he's like visibly agitated. And so he leaves. And then the kid who was up in the meeting room comes down to the weight room, gets his introduction. He said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" He says, "Was that so and so in here?" I said, "Yeah, it was." He kind of just shakes his head. And so I'm like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And so a couple days later, these guys come clean on what had happened. And the coaching staff we had a little intervention. It was gang related, right? Rival gang type thing. Say, "Hey, we're all on one team here." And they put it behind them, and they played on the field together at the same time. And so that's like it was like a huge like eye opener for me because I haven't really been exposed to that kind of stuff. And here we are, like we got to all get along, right?
Right.
Like we're in this together. You weren't in it
Quick.
together out there, right? And it's also like I think to be honest for them, like help them see what it was. But I did have a kid, not at Purdue. This is when I was in the private sector. He was a real good lifter for me. He got shot, and he lived. Um, but yeah, it's a real random thing, and I don't know. So not something I thought I'd be talking about. Like years down the road, it's like, hey, I can't believe this happened.
Right. You know, it's just a microcosm that, in the weight room, there's all different kinds of people. People grow
Absolutely,
up in different areas, different backgrounds, different beliefs, different cultures. And the goal is still the same. It's win games.
and 100%.
And, and,
And we had kids.
and that is so hard. That is so hard to find the cues for people that are interested, to find the cues that are optimal culturally, infinitely harder, and getting those folks to work together to play a game that is
100%.
violent, fast, tons of money on the line, performance on the line, injuries on
Yep.
the line, livelihoods everywhere, all this pressure. And that's what you have to work with. The only thing that makes it even more challenging is now there's a portal, right? So
Right.
back
Well,
then, or at all points in time, it is such a brutally hard job, and you have a huge staff
the
trying to make that happen.
the most critical point, and even to your point about the portal now, the most critical point in coaching is how quickly can I establish a relationship with this person.
Mm,
And that's the other benefit of the volume of people I got to work with at Purdue was because every one of those athletes that came in there had a different background, right? And not all of them were on the extreme of poverty and gang violence. Some of them were extremely wealthy. I mean, dude, our punter one year at Purdue, his family, he was Australian. His family owned the Foster's beer, so like they're on all kinds of spectrum, but it's, yeah, that goes well. But there's just all kinds of people you have to be able to connect with too, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'm sure um, that kid could have bought my house, but every time somebody walks in the door, they got to be able to relate to you, and you got to be able to relate to them. And for example, there was to the gang thing. Um, my first boss had a rule that when you can use the next biggest plate. So for those that don't know, kilogram plates are color coded, and they have a smaller plate that's color coded. It's 10% of what the bigger one is, right? So a 25 kilos red, a 2.5 kilos red, right?
Mm-hmm.
A 20
Yep.
kilos blue, a 2 kilos blue, right? So they're color coded. It's for international competition purposes. But my boss's rule was when you can use the next size plate, you go up. So instead of using a 20 and a 5 kilo plate, use a 25 kilo plate. Okay, 25 kilo plates are red. So I go over to this kid's bar one day. He's got all these blue plates on there and all this shit. And I'm saying, "Hey man, I need you to color up this plate." He's like, "Not gonna happen." I'm like, okay, why not? He's like, I don't fuck with anything that's red. Hey, I don't like you either, bud. I don't care for Ohio State. And I just joke and move on. And so I
Right.
come back, I say, hey man, like, look, I'm not trying to I get you have, this part of your past. I'm assuming you weren't referring to Ohio State, when you said or IU. And he's like, yeah, and he's
It's
obvious. I
Nebraska.
said, but they weren't in the conference at the time.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so like getting him to like, hey, come around here, like man, say, hey, we gotta let that part go. Like this is why we do this here, and whatever.
Do you know why he wouldn't do it?
Yeah, he was a Crip,
Okay.
right? Red's the color of bloods, right?
Gotcha.
And he would come in with like the bandana, and like we had to stop. Like he would hang out of his pocket. We'd have to like stop that, and you
Right.
know. So
Yeah. Even Jack at school, he can't wear an unbreakable shirt. Here's your
yeah,
uniform. Everything,
this is
even when
what
you're
you
in
wear.
the, this is what you wear every day. Every
Absolutely.
day. Yep. That's why it's called a uniform. Everyone's the uniform. Everyone is the same.
I'm telling you, everybody with all those backgrounds on one page.
Yeah. That's hard.
Yep.
Man, it's hard. So I think you've probably been over this before. When I look at athletes, I look at their head, talk about their mindset, their knowledge how to play their sport, and I say teammates is how they work with people. And then on their body, there's their training, there's the nutrition, what goes in their mouth, and there's how they recover. And then their playbook is how you bring it all together. And I asked you some great questions here, and it's not the point that I asked great questions. The point of that you had some great, even better answers. And first line here is, what do you want to talk about? And you go, man, your mind drives everything, and I couldn't agree more. But why did you put that down? Like, hey, let's talk about how your mind drives everything, because it's absolutely true. But it's important
Right.
enough for
So
you to cite that. So why?
yeah. So this is the podcast is about building athletes, right?
Yeah,
And so I would chunk them into two categories,
and
right?
Purdue football, since I went to Purdue, so
And Purdue football, right?
that's cool.
So on the let's just take a sport that doesn't involve a barbell, okay?
Okay,
Such as football, right? Since we love it so much. But the overall coaches get too wrapped into, to be honest, like the structure of the program, okay?
mm-hmm.
Where there's powerlifting based or Olympic lifting based. And I can argue the merits of those and why I think that Olympic lifting based, if you're going to choose one, would be far superior over powerlifting. I can argue that all day long. But at the
Far.
end of the day, it just doesn't matter,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I would even, as you joked about Lucas and his bodybuilding, I'd even say you could have a bodybuilding based program in football. It just doesn't matter because at some point, let me make sure I'm clear about this. They have to have a skill set that is far beyond like just their body's physical ability to perform a thing, right? So, for example, your son at Ball State, he needs to be strong and powerful and run fast and jump high. But when the ball snapped and they're in a two tight end set, and he's playing outside linebacker, and he sees run action coming at him, he's got to be able to figure out whether they're actually running the ball, reading
Right.
through his visual keys, or if they're going to pass and there's a tight end that's going to be trailing behind him, right? He's got to be able to analyze that real quick. Okay.
Right.
So that's like the mental part of the sport. And even on something that's physically imposing, I'll use jiu-jitsu as an example because I do it. When somebody starts attacking me in a certain way, I got to know what's 3 moves ahead and for him and 3 moves ahead for me, right? If I want to get
Sure.
out of a bad situation, for example. So my mind has to be number one, and then my physical abilities become number two. Okay. But back to my mind being number one, if I don't have any commitment to any one of those training programs, bodybuilding, powerlifting, or Olympic weightlifting, and I just do nothing, well, that's the worst thing is you're
Right.
doing nothing, right?
Right.
Now, when you are preparing for the sport of Olympic weightlifting, you probably should do an Olympic weightlifting based training program. When you're
Sure.
preparing for the sport of deadlifting or what is that powerlifting, you should
Right.
do benching and
Squat, deadlift. Yeah.
squat. Yeah, the things, right? But um, I could also argue that there's some throws events where you really need to have Olympic lifts, and there's a lot of benefits for it. Why? Just like the rhythm and timing of it, those sort of things, and whatever. But outside of the barbell sports, I think it's largely irrelevant because you need to give them a stimulus, right? Have them
Right.
respond to a stimulus to get stronger and faster. And then you need to give them the ability to run, right? It's like speed development. They really have to have the ability to run. Are you teaching them proper mechanics and giving them opportunity, right? Like if I, if you just think about how many kids or adults or whatever just don't have the opportunity to run, right? How are they ever get any better at it?
Gotcha. So a lot of people or teams will use the barbell because it's convenient and it's uniform and it's easy to replicate. And you're right. There's people that simply just, there's plenty of farmers. Those kids are strong as can be, right? There's people working mines, people, factory workers, whatever. They're strong. They're carrying stuff all day long. You're strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the point of the lifting and the running and everything else is so you can apply your skill. That's the ultimate.
Yep.
That is the point. In all those areas, you might be the fastest, strongest, most powerful person, but you can't learn the plays. You can't pick up the blocking sequence as a running back. You're not on the field. You might be complete 100% dialed in and know everything about the playbook and always in position, but you could be weak as shit. And now that's the limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at that is in all those areas of that athlete, you got to check the boxes so you're in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be strong enough, big enough. You're not playing Purdue weighing 120 pounds. You check all the boxes in the game, so you're in the game, right? Then, what is your competitive advantage? An example I always give is, what is Walmart's competitive advantage? They are the cheapest, right? So, what is your competitive advantage on the field? Can you apply that better than anyone else? Then you're winning. Then you're winning, right?
Absolutely.
At the same time, you're looking at your weakest link that holds you back. You got to bring those up so they're not holding you back, right?
Yep.
It could be how you deal with your teammates, and that could be how you deal with your coaching staff. And you're not coachable, so you're fast and strong, and you learn the plays, but you're an asshole. Yeah. So, right. See you around.
Absolutely.
And to your point, though, in all these endeavors, how are you going to communicate? How are you going to train? How are you going to look at your nutrition, recovery, your training? Your mind will dictate what you decide to do and how relentlessly you decide to do it, right? Some things that drive you, though, you made a couple points on the sheet. Shame drives people, fear drives people, right? So what drives Dan Brown at your core?
Well, let's talk about shame, because that's the thing that everybody wants to defend. And like, you can't, if somebody makes fun of you or, says a negative comment to you, it's like this huge, like, you're perfect the way you are. You shouldn't listen to that. But those bits of shame, like, are actually motivating. You need that to get better, right? So, like, if my best, closest group of friends call me out on every single thing, right? They're still my great group of friends, but they're like, hey, man, you're getting fat. Like, I bet you do a little better in your next competition if you didn't have that spare tire around your belly, right? Slowing you down, right? They still love me the same. They're still my best friends. They're my boys. They want me to get better, right? They're calling me out on it. And it's like, you know what? Hey, man, you know what? I'm going to step out there and, like, maybe I should be in a little better shape. Okay, my first boss, I mean, you probably get fired now for doing this, but we would go out there first day of conditioning before when kids come back for the summer before camp starts, right? He'd make everybody take their shirts off. Let's see who was working out this summer. Let's see who wasn't, right? I mean, it's just, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's certainly right.
Right.
I mean, because a little bit of shame and that kind of accountability goes a long way. Okay. Now, if it's so much, if it's so much that you can't take action, that's a problem.
That's destructive.
But
At
it's
that point.
your problem. It's your problem because you let those words have that much influence on your action. Right.
Right.
So maybe you need to reevaluate, like, who's pulling the strings in between your ears. Right?
You feel how you choose to feel, regardless of who says it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be your spouse. It could be your parents.
Yes. It doesn't matter who says it. And this is a lesson I've taught. My kids listen to the most horrific, and for reference, they're 12 and 10, the most horrific music you can imagine. Right. And they have since they were a child. Right. Like, I mean, I let them listen to whatever. I don't care. And they can put on whatever around me. They know there's certain things like, hey, when grandma's comes over, you know what? We don't play that kind of music, right? But
no DMX.
my point, they think DMX is soft, but
Right.
my point being is words don't have power unless you give them power, right? My
Right.
kids are also really small. They're not built like me, right? And they've been told, all the time, you're too small to do this. You're too small to do this. They've never once come home and said, I've been bullied. I've been made fun of. They don't give any credence, right? They just go out
Right.
there and do their thing because I've, from day one been like, hey, you gotta have control. You can only control how you respond to what people say, right? And now,
Yep.
if somebody says something to me and it's shame or they're messing with me or they're trying to hold me accountable, I'm only going to listen to the people that I care about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no offense, Lucas, but we haven't spent a lot of time together. If you call me fat, I don't give a shit, right?
Right.
But if one of my training partners that I train with every day for the last 7 years, like, hey, man, you got to get in shape. Like, you're hurting yourself when you go out there on the mat, right? Hey, you're making the team look bad. Like, I would care about that. Like, oh,
Sure.
man, you know what? You're right. Okay. And then the other part of that is fear, right? And the fear is a motivator people don't get because most people don't give a shit enough, right? Like my fear that I might fail, that I might lose or embarrass myself is a motivator. So I had
Sure.
and I'm like way past my competitive prime. I'm not doing this for any reason other than my sheer enjoyment of wanting to test myself for the things I do. Right. But my kids had never seen me compete in a jiu-jitsu match. And I took them to a super fight I did. I don't even know when it was, back in the summer. Right. So it's one-on-one, light right in the middle of the stage. It's in the theater, one of those scenarios. They've never seen me compete. Right. Well, the fear of losing in front of your kids, like embarrassing yourself, because it's just another man dominating you, okay,
Right.
in no homo kind of way. But it's like somebody's just physically imposing their will, and those kids see me as dad, like the indestructible force, right?
Yeah. Right.
Dad ain't going out there and losing, not in front of
Right.
these kids. Like, and then that fear that, hey, if you don't get your ass up and work, your kid's gonna watch you take an ass beating. Okay.
Right.
Now, what would be more demoralizing than if somebody just walked into your house and beat your ass in front of your kids? That's pretty bad,
That's pretty
right?
bad.
So exactly. So and so that's on the physical side. Then on the business side, it's the same thing, right? Like, well, if I don't handle my shit on this business, whatever it may be, or make the right decisions, or change and go the right path, my family's living on the street.
Right. There's
Am I going
pressure.
to look at my kids and tell them like, hey, Dad didn't get it done today because Dad didn't make it happen. Hey,
Right.
we got to sell our stuff, right? We're moving out. I mean, that's a fear, right?
Yeah.
That's highly motivating.
Yep.
Youth athletes don't come to that. They come to shame sooner, right? They come to
Right.
shame before they come to grips with fear,
They
right?
do, and
And
it takes a level of maturity to recognize that too.
fear heightens awareness,
It
right? Like
does.
that's the benefit of fear, right? So in a combat sport, you want or in football, in anything, you have fear. You want to be dialed in and focused on what you're doing. You just have to recognize it and use it as your advantage and recognize those feelings of fear to move you forward, not to hold you back. Same with shame. You got to recognize the feelings of shame to move you forward, not to hold you back. You just got to discern between the two.
Well, you'll see with different folks, and you can argue with different groups, it's more prevalent, but that fear of failure becomes, crippling. And I'll see with kids, and it's not even the fear of failure. It's now at the point where it's a fear of letting others know that you give a shit and you try hard. So then you get shamed for trying hard, where the phrase "try hard" is actually a thing, and people don't want to be seen as a try hard. Now, it's great when your kids are mentally strong enough and you brought them up, so that's awesome. So someone calls them a try hard, and they're like, "I don't give a shit about what you say," right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. But there's those that haven't learned that yet. The next component is when I work with someone and I say, "Hey, that's not okay," whether it's my family or a friend or in the gym. I have to, sometimes if they don't know we have that trust built, like you said, you don't know Lucas that well. I'm gonna say I'm gonna care enough about you to say this isn't okay. This isn't good enough. Your effort, your approach, your mindset. But you still have to build that trust, because someone might still say, "Hey, fuck off," whatever.
Right.
But if you couch it like that, I'm caring enough about you. I always refer to those folks. as not as my friends. They're more as my allies. We have a common goal. We're trying to hit an objective. My allies will lock arms with me, and we're moving forward. The thing about, though, you can't fail. Like, man, you're going to fail a whole bunch of times before you win, right?
100%.
So you have to couch it with your athletes and your kids that, hey, I'm going to get my ass beat, but it's not going to be from an effort level. It's not going to be from the preparation level. And if you're paired, in jiu-jitsu with the same belt, it should be a realm or a range where you're comparable. If your effort's in, though, you're probably not going to get your ass beat. You could be close, right? Which is completely different. You also got to make it known, though, that, hey, I'm looking for as many losses as I can get so I can advance quicker. I'm looking to learn how to lose here so I can make my adjustments. I'm not paralyzed and not moving forward because of that fear. I'm embracing those losses so I can advance quicker than someone else who won't move.
So in jiu-jitsu, my coach has a good saying. He says all the time, you either win or you learn, right? There's one or the two. And there's levels to jiu-jitsu. There's certainly dudes that you're saying that can put it on you, but it's 100% the issue. But, when you talk about developing athletes, okay, and like youth athletes, it's the parents are the problem, right? They get in the way of letting the kids fail because they don't want their kids to experience that discomfort. And I've coached a ton of youth football, right? And by the way, PhD, ABD, okay, in the philosophy of teaching, right? Years of professional coaching, the parents still say, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Now, do I give a shit? No, because I don't care about them, right? I care about the kids, right? But the parents are afraid to let the kids sit with the failure, right? However, they're measuring failure, by the way. The kid may not even be measuring it that way. They're usually measuring it in how much time did my kid play in the game.
Right.
Right.
Jocko's phrase is, the more you help, the more you hurt. They don't build that resilience from being coddled and made things easy. The resilience only comes that you've been under some kind of load and you kept going. You strained somewhere, and it could be on the field, it could be under a bar, and it could be having a hard conversation with your spouse, right? But you've been underneath this load and you're still pushing forward, and your confidence only comes from reps. And if you take away all the reps where you can build that resilience, then you are left to be weak, and that's it.
So let me tie this back to athlete development. Okay.
Right.
I had a real good Olympic weightlifter, world team level, Olympic level, real good. Probably the single best female athlete I ever had. And I had it from day one to the end. Okay. And she grew up in a real wealthy household. Okay. Two parents, they pay for college, all that kind of shit. Right. My parents loved me. They weren't able to do that. And I just never really had like that kind of help. Like they always encouraged me to like do stuff, but it was Dan figure it out. Right. She never had that. And I told her significant other and that coach, Mark Canella, I thought that her upbringing was going to be the reason she wouldn't make an Olympic wouldn't make an Olympic team or a world team. She had all the skills. She had the numbers to do it. She wasn't able to put it together when it mattered most, but she never experienced adversity ever.
Mm-hmm.
Zero, right? Zero.
What happened?
So, a lot happened, but she had the opportunity. She's one lift away from doing it. She has, I don't want to give away who this person is, but she has multiple chances to hit this one lift. She's hit 1,000 times, and she literally doesn't perform either lift, and blames on some other issues. But that was it, right? Never came back and gave it another try, which she could have had years more of pursuing it, right? But just not the resilience to overcome when things go bad.
Right.
right? And she like her life was too good, right? And that sounds kind of messed up because you always want your kids to have a better life than you do, and you don't want them to struggle, and you don't want them to suffer, but she just had not experienced adversity like that, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not athletically. So
Yeah. Yeah. Be thankful for the struggle, for it creates perseverance. That's just right around. That's just one James. Accepting fear is normal, using it to focus, and acknowledging what is human. That's under your
yeah,
mind.
yeah,
That's under your mindset question.
yeah,
Acknowledging what
yeah.
is human.
Well,
Expand on that a little bit.
so it's just the idea. I struggle with this because in my ideal vision of myself, I'm completely stoic, right? And I can just let things go and they can bounce off me and like I'll just
Oh,
steady it. I'll keep my mouth shut.
that's not
And
true.
that's in my mind. I've read all of Ryan Holiday's books. I love
Uh,
stoicism. I just believe it. These things aren't
yep.
going to affect us. And man, it's the hardest thing for me to master to date. And I'm not sure that I ever will because I experience these feelings that are normal human feelings, and I want them just to go away, right? And I want them to get out of the way, get out of my life, so I can move on to the next thing, right,
Mm,
or whatever it may be. Um, but a lot of these feelings are very human, and you have to recognize where you fall on that spectrum of what you can accept, what you can change, what you got to just let go, and kind of what you can handle, right? But I I'll bring it back to jiu-jitsu. I had my first jiu-jitsu tournament years back, and no idea what to expect in the big boy division. So everybody's always a big boy right there. Looks can be intimidating, right? And I had my buddy with me, huge black guy, right? Great dude's named CJ, and he's up higher ranked than me. He's the only one that drives with me. We go over to Ohio. And I said, hey, man, like, I'm really nervous. Like, I probably shouldn't have signed up for this. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I'm probably going to get killed. And he just laughs. He's like, man, that's completely normal. He's like, you'll be fine. He's like, you'll slap bump hands. He's like, you probably won't remember the first one. He's like, the next ones you'll be fine, and it'll kind of just go, right? He's like, it's completely normal. He's like, and this dude had won a lot, and on the international stage, like he won a lot, and he was like, I feel this way before every single match, right? Just accepting it. And I heard it was a UFC guy. I'm blanking on the name. Uh, it was somebody really good. I can't remember who it was, but he was talking about like the night before every fight, he just thinks he's going to lose. Right? And he did. I forget which one it was, but he was
that's
just
the
like,
opposite of any
he has,
type of practice
he
for
has the,
success.
sorry, he doesn't think he's going to lose. It has the fear that he's going to lose. Sorry. And he has to like
Okay.
grasp it and rest. Not expect he's going to lose. Has the fear that he's going to lose and has to like grapple and deal
Dial
with
in.
that to get out there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
you
you
got
got to
dialing in.
accept
Yep.
that that's a normal human feeling, right?
Right.
Now, how do we move forward?
Right. And this Uncle Pete from the banking world, who at one time established his own bank, like built it from scratch. He had to go through all the regulations, got all the approvals, and he always comes back to with for everything in their life, man. What is your process? What is your process? I'm like, you're such a dork, man. What is your process? Just fucking move forward. Just go. And he goes, are you one of those, Jim? I go, what's that mean? He goes, all gas, no brakes. I'm like, sometimes, yeah. But well, then you'll figure out a better way to do things. You'll just be going so fast that you might have to do a couple times. But he's always about what is your process. So walk into a room, the process turn on the light so I can see what I'm doing. But it comes down to everything like that. And if you are so relentless and you're trying to win, and you're like, well, what is my process for handling being fearful the night before and the day of? How do I eat so I don't throw up with all that acid
Mm-hmm.
rolling around in my stomach? What
Absolutely.
works? What foods don't work? And so you have your journal and you're taking all your notes because you're relentlessly trying to figure out your process. Because I can't remember the quote, but it's your biggest struggle is always going to be to master yourself, or to master yourself means to win 1,000 battles. I don't know, Sun Tzu. I can't remember. It's something like that. But to your point, your biggest struggle will always be mastering yourself to get you where you need to be next. Getting through
Absolutely.
school, getting rid of your car and selling everything and making it happen. Like what is your process to move forward? And if you're always afraid, okay, fine. What's wrong with it? I get it. What do you do then? A
Right.
lot of people are like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I said, well, let's figure it out and write it down, and we'll give it a shot. And we'll try it 4 or 5 times. And if some parts work, we'll keep it. And some parts don't work, we'll just get rid of that and try something else. Because what works for me won't work for you, but we got to at least be coming up with a process and refining it and constantly moving forward. And the more relentlessly you apply that process, you advance quicker than everybody else.
For sure. For sure. I was trying to ingrain that. I trained a high school kid at my house, one high school kid, trained him out in my garage. And I trained him because I was sick of listening to how he trained. It's a
Right?
terrible thing. And I won't charge him any money because I want to be able to just tell him to get the fuck out whenever he pisses me off. Right. So he can't pay me and he has to do shit my way. It's like the best coaching scenario. It's basically going back to Purdue. Right.
Right?
And his dad played big time football. So his dad's all about it. And the kid is all about it. But he had hip pain for like an entire year. Nobody helped him. He's like just lifting at the high school. And he walks in today and they show up 15 minutes late. Okay. And I'm just out there in my sweats, cleaning the garage. And he has a 7-way hip mobility he has to do every single time. Right. And this should take him a few minutes. Okay. And a couple other like basic mobility stretching things. But he's done in like 2 minutes. I was like, hey man, you did 20 reps of every one of your 7-way hips. And he's like, no, man, I just want to get going. Can we get squatting? And I was like, we ain't doing this your way. Right. This is the process for how we get your hip better. Because in 2 weeks, his hip's been feeling better. It's not
Right?
100% there. It just feels better.
Right?
So, and I'm making the point. I'm like, so it started feeling better. So now you want to change what we were doing? I'm
Right?
like, are you coaching me now? And just like putting it back on him. Like
Right?
his dad hangs out and lifts too. His dad's awesome. But his dad just like, yeah, Cam, you coaching Dan now? Just like,
Just give it to him.
but
Right?
yeah, exactly. But he's like, hey man, let's like, we came here. Well, we were told to come here, but
Right?
and he's glad to be here. I don't make it sound like it's torture. He's a good, great kid, but yeah, gotta have process.
And I always say, another phrase, because there's tons of them, it takes what it takes. And yeah, I could tell people all the time that if I would have done some more of the mobility things I was supposed to do, I was taught to do, there's some injuries I would have avoided, or they would have been way, way smaller, less impactful. Because the way is the way. And if you don't have your process and you're not as disciplined, then your freedoms go away then too.
Absolutely.
Yep. The thing about the payment, right? All the lifters at Westside, they don't pay, right? Because as Tom puts out, and he's right, and it makes it hard. There's a conflict of interest. I might be giving you more of what you want, so you keep staying around and paying, or I'm going to do what I truly know and believe I think is best for you and push you through this. And then when you just quit and walk away, well, then there's a financial negative there,
Yeah.
right? So then if a kid comes to you and, hey, I'm training you for free, but you got to do like this, like, one, what a huge gift, right? The value and such a huge gift, but you can then train them like that. And when they buy in, boy, it's almost unfair at that point. It's so easy when you have someone buying in and they trust you and you push them because they trust you. And if you're not going to push them in a spot where they shouldn't succeed. It's almost like I was talking with Smitley. He's like, yeah, it's almost easy. If someone come and train with you through middle school and high school, are they playing in college? They're like, yeah, pretty much. I can't guarantee
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee it, but it's almost, yeah, for sure. It's easy at that point. Kind of a joke.
Yeah, I don't think that's a great point. I don't think I've had a kid that came in for sports performance that didn't play somewhere.
Right.
But you mentioned it. I got to spend one of those weird perks of the Purdue thing was they sent me to West Side for, it wasn't quite a week, like maybe 4 days with 2 other coaches to just hang out with Louie. We ate at Bob Evans 3 times a day with Louie and like did all the shit and just asked him a bunch of questions. And it was like really an interesting discussion, right? Because I don't think it was useful in the sense of taking back training methodologies that should be applied to what we're doing with the football team. Outside of understanding a force velocity curve and we need to train across that curve, not just in one modality or the other, not in extremes, right? It's a bell curve
Sure. Right.
of force production, right? But the biggest lesson is just like the mindset and the commitment and commitment to training that he had cultivated, right? And then once you got inside that like group, the reason those dudes loved him, right? And would do whatever the hell he said. Obviously, it helped. He had a proven track record, and this was on like the later end too. This was not like the Chuck Vogelpool type days. This was, I forget who the guy was. I can see his face.
Matt Wenning.
No, it was. God, he squatted 1,000 pounds in a suit because he was there squatting the day we were there.
There's a bunch of those.
Something. I don't know. It was the most at that time. Anyway, not the point. The point is like just the community that he cultivated, and that was the bigger lesson to take back to the teams is how do we get all these guys on one page on one plane? What's going to sell that?
Happens. There's so many countless stories of you get a team to come together. Shoot, man, like how popular is Hoosiers? Right, those guys that couldn't, they all were rowing in the same direction. Funny story about the Bob Evans. You mentioned that we had Tom on a week ago, right, Lucas? Right?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So Tom Berry, who runs Westside now, and I said, I've seen it in the shows with Westside versus the World, and then people talk about Bob Evans every day, and you see he's there with the Russian coaches and blah blah blah. I go like, budget wise, like what are you looking at there? He goes between 45 and 50 grand a year. Bob Evans, same place. I go, so Louis gone. Is it still around? Like, what happens?
Right.
He's like,
right.
That, so like Tom was talking about breaking bread and being with those folks was, paramount, was one component, how you would share knowledge.
Yeah.
And then I just saw recently he was asking somebody another question, and to your point, what's more important in the gym is being really strong and or the culture. And the guy's like, well, they don't happen in a vacuum. You can't have one without the other. And so to be strong means you must be strong-minded because you're going to be in a level of discomfort throughout the day, so you could perform in that environment. In the culture, your allies or your boys, as you say, Danny, that's the only way you get through it because you're not getting through that by yourself.
Absolutely.
You have to have all those pieces or it does not work. And when all those pieces are working together, and you got some teams that win titles, and you also see teams that fall apart, right?
For sure.
Right? For sure.
For sure.
So I looked at your thing on nutrition, meat, shakes, and understanding why we eat.
Yeah.
Obviously, meat with the protein, obviously, and shakes an easier way to get volume in, right? And then, but understanding why we eat. How's that?
Yeah.
Expand on that a little bit for working with athletes on the nutrition piece.
It never like really made sense to me until I was like in college. So, I would eat in college every single day at like 3:30, like clockwork. Like you couldn't even tell me. There won't have to be a clock around it, but I guess 3:30 because I'm eating right now, right?
Yep.
And it was when I was little. I was raised by my grandma. Okay, and it's like kind of like poor Irish type blue collar family. She would pick me up. She would drive me out to their house on Westmore Street on the west side of Indy, and I would get a snack. And that snack happened every day at 3:30. Okay, and I sit there with my Grammy, right, one of the most dearest people in my life, and I would eat a snack, right. And that snack sometimes was like one of my favorite ones was tomatoes and cottage cheese, right. And it would also be like cookies and bullshit and like just pickle loaf, if you know what that is, like pickle loaf sandwiches and cheese, just like real stick to the ribs kind of food, if you will, right? Yep. But I'm a firm believer that you don't remember a lot of conversations you have with people, but that are close to you in your life, but you remember how they make you feel, right? Yep. And my grandma always made me feel like I was the smartest, like Grandma Strong Boy, right? Just the smartest boy, the best looking. Yeah. It's still, you know what I'm saying? Grandma made me feel good. It'd be a shit day. right? But
You could do
grandma
no
just,
wrong. You could do no wrong at grandma's house.
yeah, honey, I love you so much. And I'm just sitting there shoving my face with whatever she puts in front of me. And I had the type of grandma that I hope you had to, like, she ain't letting you leave that house until you can't move. And she's sending
Mm.
food home with you, right? Like,
Yep.
I asked my grandma for my birthday well into my 20s just to make me ham salad. But it wasn't ham, it was like ground up bologna. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not the point. So I'm eating every single day at 3:30 because it became a ritual, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm eating, because that, and then I'm associating the snack time with this feeling from grandma, right? Okay, and then I also do the same thing with, like, and I just, like, I don't really like drink a lot, okay, but I started having like a glass of whiskey or bourbon at night, okay, and I just wanted that to go away because I don't like the idea that I can even be need something. I want to never need anything, right? That's part of my mindset. So I just make sure that I don't need it. But I like the ritual. Okay, so I take you're gonna think this is weird, but I take like a Scotch glass, put one of the big ice cubes in it, and fill it with diet ginger ale, right? And just have the ritual of it, right? And I just like the relaxing ritual of doing it, right? So a lot of times the food and the things you consumed isn't actually tied to anything that has to do with quality of nutrition. And then
Sure.
if you dig into research, man, it's so we know very, very little, right? And this is part of the on the academic side of my experience at Purdue. There's very little we actually know, right? There in terms of metabolism, energy, and the effects. Like, we kind of got this idea that calories in, calorie out is the way to go, but there's some hormone components tied to it. And if your hormones are out of whack, this thing goes and that thing goes. And it used to be you need 6 meals a day, and if you want to gain weight, you need 50 grams of protein every meal. And we're trying to calculate all these things. And like I was reading yesterday about, they don't think you can digest more than 20 grams of protein per meal and have it be usable, right? So it's
Right.
like I
You're
get
taking in 60, then what happens? Right.
yeah, exactly. So my nutrition information is basically I don't give a shit until I need to give a shit, right? And this is my thing with weightlifting. Like, if I saw somebody who's just grossly overweight for their weight category, I step and say, hey, we got to make some changes here. Or like when it got really dialed in, and like, especially like if I'm cutting weight, I need to put carbs around training. So I have like a better uptake in utilization during training and things like that. But that's kind of like even more advanced. But just general nutritional guidelines for people, man, if we can't start with the basics of let's eat some meat and some vegetables, we need to make sure we get plenty of protein in our diet. So here we'll have some shakes in the house too. Let's get those basics down and just figure out why the fuck we're eating. Right? Because no, everybody in the U.S. isn't stupid. Like, a Big Mac is fucking worse than an apple, but every goddamn time you're going to choose the Big Mac. Well, stop fucking choosing the Big Mac. Right? I mean,
Right.
it's as simple as shit. It doesn't take a PhD in nutrition to figure that shit out. But
Right.
70% of the country can't figure out why they're fucking obese. Right? Because they don't
Right.
sit down and think about it. Well, the real reason is they're eating because they're numbing something, or they're in a
That's right.
ritual, or they're blocking some shit out because they're not going to deal with what's in between their ears.
Right.
Right. So the nutrition advice is now a younger athlete like this kid. I gave this kid a nutritional plan, the one I was just talking about, and his dad's like, dude, he's obsessive, right? But he's equating that food to taking the next step because he's eating because he wants to play college football,
Right.
right? He ain't eating
When
because grandma made him feel good. He's eating
right.
because he wants to catch the ball, get upfield, truck a dude, score, right? That's
Right.
why that dude's eating.
So that's a different mindset. That person's driven. So now all you do is guide, right? You don't have to encourage. Someone else comes to you and there's an adult that's trying to lose weight. Well, are you a stress eater? Is that what it is? What are your habits in terms of how do you go about picking out your meals? What's the habits with you and your family, your spouse, your kids? Like, and it comes down to what do you keep doing all the time? So are you trying to avoid pain and you're finding comfort and feeling better about yourself because of the fun feelings that from being satiated? So there's that mindset. And then there's overall just what do you just constantly do all the time? Well, I always get up in the morning and I'm always so late to work that I just grab a cup of coffee and I eat on the way, So you can figure out the mindset piece, the mental piece, that's pretty hard to unlock. You can make
Jim,
enormous gains. But
who's
on
the
the
easiest
habit
client?
piece,
Who's the
who's
easiest
the
client to get to lose weight?
probably the one that actually trusts me. you know,
It has nothing to do with you. It's the one that just got a divorce or got dumped.
Oh yeah, right.
That's the easiest. That's the easiest person, right? Because either
They're,
way it worked. Either way it's going, right? They were
yeah,
either staying in a relationship and numbing it with food. Now they're out of
sure,
it. They don't have to do that anymore, right?
right.
Or they're like, oh shit,
I better,
I'm
I
about
better
to.
look good
I'm
again.
about. Yes, I mean that's a natural human thing, right? Or they're having.
Yep,
It's just another. It's a different why, right? Like that's the
yep,
easiest person to get to lose weight,
yep.
right?
So, a person with the big, strong why, you just give them a little push in the direction they are off and running. They're
Go
off and running.
exactly.
Just go.
If they don't know why they're there, this was always my problem. This was always my problem with CrossFit. Okay,
Uh
is
huh.
my that was always my problem with CrossFit. Is where are we going? We're doing everything. Why?
Right.
Why are we doing everything?
Well,
I want to be good at something.
the idea for them to be good at something, from what I understand and what I've seen and witnessed and worked with them, is they want to be good at being healthy and well-rounded. So
That
the
has to be
goal,
it. That has to be the answer, right?
so the goal is I want to be able to handle my body weight, some weight, distance, short sprints. They want to be able to. They can do all the things physically they're asked to do, and well-rounded. So the goal is to be able to do that all the time. Do they want to be the best at gymnastics or the strongest? Typically not.
No, right?
Typically not.
Yeah,
Some might want to do like a local competition, like similar to running your own half
yeah,
marathon.
yeah,
Okay, fine. Let's elevate it a little bit more. But
yeah.
overall, they want to just be well-rounded and pretty good at everything, not great. And
Yep,
that's the goal. I'm like, cool, great, right?
yeah, for sure.
A couple other. I'll go through these rapid fire questions, right? But one I'm gonna circle back to because you said let's talk about it. But you say you listen to any kind of music, right?
Any kind of music.
Any right? I remember it
And,
was one real quick before I asked that question. Like, so I opened the gym in 13. I remember Dustin was running sports performance for us, end of 13, early 14. So 14, Sam's born in 06, so he's 8. Remember, little guy Sam. He's
time
senior this
flies.
year.
Ice
He's
cream and
senior this
Legos.
year.
I know, man.
That's right. That's his
Ice cream and Legos.
when his big business idea, his own business was to a shop
Genius
where
idea. I'll probably steal it.
you can buy ice cream there and you can buy Legos and you just kind of hang out and you try it while you're there. But I come downstairs and he's eating like a toaster waffle, and he's just sitting there kind of just bouncing his head. He's going, "Where the hood? Where the hood? Where the hood at?" I go, "What'd you say?" He goes, "Where the hood? Where the hood? Where the hood at?" I go, "That's DMX." He goes, "Yeah, that's Dustin's music." You know. So what do you listen to when you train?
It's funny because the high school kid I was training out there. I said, "Hey man," he goes, "Do you ever play anything other than house music?" And I was like, "Yeah, I play everything, but right now I'm just kind of into this. I've been into it for a while. It's like it's just kind of the groove of what I'm in, and it's like DJ Tiesto and stuff like that. But I listen to all of it, and in fact, at one point when I had the competitive weightlifting team, I'd make them listen to a metronome. I'll listen to anything. Yeah,
That's it
because
over and over again,
what dude, it goes back to I don't want anything having control over me, right? And these
right?
weightlifters would be so concerned about what was going on the radio, they wouldn't be
Mm,
focused on the thing they need to be focused, which is picking up the weight. Right. And guess
sure.
what? I'll eliminate that distraction real quick. Now, and
Yep.
the thing about it is like 2 months into it, they all started to like it. Right. And then I was doing a bunch of experiments and putting it at different speeds. But when I put it at something that was close to 50 to 60 beats a minute, maybe a little lower, like slow them down a little bit, anxiety wise, get them in like an optimal state of arousal, something to more mimic their heartbeat. They were a little better with it. When I would do like one beat every minute, it would make them fucking lose their shit.
Yeah, because
Just,
it's too slow, right?
just tonk, and then like it'd be all quiet a minute later. Tonk, dude, maddening. I loved it. But my first boss at Purdue, Jim used to do that shit all the time. One time for an entire training session, he played the sound of a helicopter landing. Okay, that's an hour of you lifting with the sound of a helicopter landing, right? Which you can Google that sound, by the way. It's just dunk, 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 dunk. It sounds like it's landing in the room, right?
Oh my goodness.
And but see that, and that's also where I get that from is because Lathrop, he would let anybody bring in any music. He only had one rule. I mean, this is when CDs were a thing. Whatever you brought in, we had to listen to the whole thing start to finish, right? Whole thing. You couldn't cherry pick nothing. And
Okay.
he, I mean, and he meant it, but everything.
All right.
Everything. Yeah.
A place you want to go?
I think on there I put Iceland.
Pick up a stone,
Yeah. Yeah. And just
right?
like hot springs, cold weather. Like I'd be down for that
Favorite
for
sports
sure.
movie?
Man, that was tough. I don't remember what I put on there. It's either the program
Mm-hmm.
or did I put the program on there?
Nope. No,
Oh
sir.
man, what one did I put on
Doesn't
there?
doesn't really matter what you put on there. What do you think? Like, what comes to your head?
Put Goodwill Hunting on there.
Close. Matt Damon for Rounders.
Rounders. So Ra- Rounders and Goodwill Hunting is the same.
Okay.
And this is why I put on it. Now I'm glad you said that, right? Because Goodwill Hunting and Rounders, same movie. People don't think about this, but both those people are struggling with
Mm-hmm.
what they want to be versus
Their identity.
who
Their identity.
somebody thinks they should be. Right?
Right.
This is a huge struggle, and this is a big thing in athletics too. Right?
Favorite sport?
Football, for sure.
Not jujitsu.
I mean, jiu-jitsu's is up there.
Weightlifting.
Weightlifting's up there, but football, there's something different about football. Because jiu-jitsu and weightlifting are individual things, right? You know, you do jiu-jitsu in a team environment, just like you do wrestling in a team environment. They bring you different things. Like when you walk out on a wrestling mat or a jiu-jitsu mat, there's only one person out there you can blame, and you're
Mm.
looking at them right, every day when you get up. And that's why I love that sport. But the complexity of football and the like layered levels to it allow you to develop some of the greatest relationships you'll ever have in your
Why isn't? Why don't you know that rugby's not better than football?
It might be. I just wasn't ever exposed to it. Very,
Gotcha.
very well could be, right?
Sure.
And
It kind of depends, right?
what my business partner in the spine business played professional hockey. Right? He and I talk about it all the time, and there's a lot of he talked about a lot of comparisons between football and professional hockey in terms of locker room. He talked about winning a championship. This is at the professional level with guys that he couldn't stand. He could stand them there on the ice,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Favorite book?
That's easy. That's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Not all holidays books about being stoic, but Mr. Dan just flying off the handle. But I'm being
That's right.
stoic today, right? Favorite villain?
Bane.
Yeah. Favorite lift?
I did put on there overhead press. It could be that would be 1A. 1B would be a like dumbbell row.
Really?
Both of them the same reason, right?
Which is?
Well, if you're just standing because they're the thickness builder, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't have a big overhead press and not just be thick, right? Have
Right.
big strong back traps, shit that like makes you look like you can carry the world's
Yeah.
problems on your back. Right? 'Cause that's what you're supposed to be designed to do because you're the man, you're the leader of your house. You need to be one of them two things.
Favorite way to train?
Alone?
What if you had your boys, though, that are like-minded?
Uh, here's the deal. I don't know if you've been around me training. A lot of times when they're like-minded, once I get going training wise, like my intensity starts picking up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it picks up. I start talking shit.
Yep.
Right. And if my boys are in there, they're like-minded, they start talking shit back. And
Yep.
next thing you know, we're not doing the workout. We're
And we're fucked.
fighting. We're throwing shit at each other. We're wrestling. And all of a sudden, like we're arguing over stupid shit that doesn't matter. I literally, one of my jiu-jitsu training partners, we got into it about jiu-jitsu while we were in the weight room at the gym. And I was like, man, we settle this right now, like right here, on the hard ass floor at the gym. And I was like, how about if you lose, you don't come back to jiu-jitsu for 6 months, right? That's how it started. Dude got hurt, right? And
Perfect.
I'm like, well, dumbass, you shouldn't have got me fired up. So I love training with my boys, but
Mr. Stoic.
See, you
Mr.
push
Stoic.
it. You can read all the books, but it doesn't always mean you're going to do the action.
Right? Well, I got that clearly. It wasn't. It was maybe 2 Fridays ago, and usually I don't get to train with anybody. I train usually around 7, and no one is really training then. So, but Fridays, my man Brian Wiest is there, and the other guy Brian, and it's an upper body day, and it's speed work, and so we hit our main lift and our first accessory, and we don't even get into our triceps yet for upper body, but it's sort of like let's do shoulders. That's next. It's what's listed. That's what I plan on. And it's just real basic. Couple sets. We're doing tens, right? And then someone said something, right? I don't
Oh
remember what
yeah.
the fuck. I don't remember what it was. And I go, okay, 10 rounds of 10 sound good.
Yep.
They're like, yep, sure does. And then we're done with the 10 rounds of 10. And they're like, that's it. And I'm like, all right. How about 10 rounds of 10 front raise and 10 rounds of 10 bent over lateral raise too? We'll hit our shoulders for 300 reps, right? So we're doing this, and it's on the minute. So now for 30 minutes, we're doing a set, right? For 30 minutes, just arms flailing everywhere, and these guys, their weight's going down. You start with dumbbells at 30. Next thing you know, I'm looking around, and they got 15s in their hand because they got to do another set because they ran their mouth. And then we're done, and he goes, well, we didn't even get the top of our traps yet. We didn't do any shrugs. And I was like, I just go, dark place. He goes, what? Dark place. And he goes, so what are we looking at, Weast? And he goes, I don't know. Let's grab those 70-pound kettlebells. And then I go, all right, how many reps? He goes, 25 sound good? I go, fine. And I go, how many sets you want? He goes, 5 rounds of 25. I go, well, you're halfway there. And he goes, what? I go, we're going to do 10 rounds of 25 so you learn the lesson. So the 300 plus the 250 in the next 40 minutes, I'm at 550 reps of shoulders. 3 days later, I can't turn my neck to drive home, right? I got a whole bunch of stupid in me. I'm laying on a baseball trying to get things to loosen up, right? It's still inflamed the next morning. Cold shower did not help. Cold bath, nothing helped. I'm at the chiropractor a week later. He's like, dude, you can't even turn. What happened? I go, someone said something. And he goes, what did they say? I go, I don't even know. He goes, oh, Jim, you got to really rein that in. I go, yeah, I know, Doc, but sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the problem training with people.
Sometimes, right? I come home and told my wife, she goes, you boys are so stupid. And Jen's like, she's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I am. I get it. Well, Monday this week, she's training with me and Brian. And we're done at the end. So we're doing like a static hold for our core. So holding the kettlebell on one side, right? 30 seconds on, 30 on the other side, rest. And one of my quotes is everything you do plus 2. That's not me. That's Urban Meyer in his book. Everything you do plus 2, you always do a little bit extra. Always push all the way to the end and pass goal line, do a little extra is the point. And so we did our 3 rounds. Everything's all set. And Brian goes, well, everything you do plus 2, right, Jen? And Jen just kind of closes her eyes, and she's like, okay. So next thing you know, we're doing another round, right? And this is just 10 days after the whole shoulder debacle. And so I look over at Jen, and Jen has now taken away the rest periods. So instead of having a good 30 seconds to recover, and let's just back at it again, back at it. And you're holding the weight, and it's pulling you one side, and you're holding the weight, and she goes, all right, this is what we're going to do this one time. We're going to take away all the rest. It's going to suck, but we're not going back and forth. We've had plenty of stimulus. Get the hell out of here. And I was like, yes, ma'am. No problem. The quote that you had listed, the man in the arena. Yeah, I'm seeing Tom Brady talk about that. My dad's talked about it, Teddy Roosevelt. And it really matters that you are in the thick of things, right?
Absolutely.
It really matters. Well, your favorite superhero, if I circle back, says the Hulk and Agent Romanov, Scarlett Johansson, right? Together, not as individuals, we should discuss this.
So
that's what you said.
Because, Agent Romanoff just walked in and brought me this drink, by the way. Which I was under the weather today, Jim, but with this diet ginger ale, I seem to be feeling a lot better. But So here's the deal with Hulk, right? So Agent Romanoff, she's badass anyway. Plug here to my boy Connor. He's the East Coast guy. He used to train Scarlett Johansson. Said she's phenomenally nice. Everybody knows she's smoking hot. So she's a stud in these Marvel movies. The Hulk's a stud, right? And they can do quite a bit. But there's times when the Hulk needs to go back to Bruce Banner, right? And they need his brain and his intelligence, and they need Dr. Bruce Banner, not the Hulk. You can't just have the Hulk smashing shit, right? This is that play between stoicism and who I actually am, right? But they can't get him back. The only person that can get him back is Agent Romanoff. He's the only one that has the magic touch or the magic things to say. She rubs his back just the right way and says, hey, come on, big guy. You got to settle down. So they need to like refocus, recalibrate, and to go on to the next step, to be the next level of hero they need, right? Sometimes you need that motherfucker pissed off and mad and running through windows and smashing bad guys. But sometimes you need that dude to be able to think about the next steps going forward, right? And that's that interplay. But alone, that doesn't happen. They only do it when they're together.
Yeah, the power that comes from that support from your partner like that, your spouse, right?
Best decision you can ever make in your life.
The whole is
divorce the guy, right?
Right. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
The whole is definitely bigger than the sum of the parts, and that's pretty easy math there.
Exactly.
Man, Dan, great time. Thanks for being so generous with us. A lot of laughs, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.